Morning DFS. Welcome into week 12 of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at Todzilla1337. You can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. Today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. We got the green screen blacking out the one part of the symbol there. Looking to make it rain some cash in DFS. Tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite and follow host Todd Hoffman while he delivers the most accurate DFS advice in the industry and make it rain. All right, folks, today's flavor is Melon Mania, which I believe is watermelon. It's red and green. Oh, that's good stuff. All right, everyone. Time for the audit check. We are now successful in 8 out of 11 weeks in DFS so far this year using this Adjusted Line Play Report. Very successful. These are large field FanDuel tournaments, so upwards of 600,000 entrants. 8 out of 11 weeks we have made more than the entry fees we put in. The average winning week is in between about 1.8 and about 2.5 times the entry fees that we put in, upwards of a little over 4x the entries that we put in. All the losses this year have been less than 25%. We have one just 9 total cents, and then another one that was about around 8%, I believe, and then another one that lost that was about 23-24% of the entry fees that we put in. So let's just say it was $10, 23-24%. You're looking at only losing just a minor amount there. So nothing too crazy. Like I said, everything is pretty much wheels up. 8 out of 11 weeks we've earned more than 25% of our entry fees beyond what we put in. So highly corollary. But we have a big show underway for you guys. This is Thanksgiving Slate. There's not a single buy on here, and we're going to go over the Thanksgiving Day slate first. Excuse me there. We'll just kind of go over those 3 games, give you an idea of what you can expect in that, so you can play that. And then we're going to go through the main slate, and then we'll hit up Sunday night and Monday night games. Again, this is going to be 16 games. We got to fly through this, try to keep it under an hour. Already wasted several minutes here. First game on the Thanksgiving slate here, Buffalo at Detroit. We have Buffalo actually 9.5-point road favorites heading into Detroit for the second week in a row following that snowstorm. Buffalo accounting for 32 team implied total, one of the highest I've seen on the whole year. Detroit at 22.5 for a Vegas game total of 54.5. Again, we're recording this Wednesday morning. A lot of these things were from Tuesday afternoons. By the time Thursday rolls around, some of these numbers, at least as far as Vegas game totals, may change a little bit. But getting into the Buffalo offensive side, they're number 7 and number 3 in the offensive pass DVOA, while Detroit's 29 and 23 at stopping the pass, or on the pass rush side. And then looking at the running side for Buffalo, 20 and 19 versus Detroit's 21 and 27. That's kind of an even end there on the rushing side. And typically when we get into the rushing or any of these categories where it's a dead even like that, it's like a studs eat. If people who are good at football will do well. I don't necessarily think Buffalo has any of those people in the running back room. We have a huge favor for them in the pass game, which is, I think, how they're going to move the ball. Typically, when they have a bunch of time like this, it ends up limiting Stephon Diggs' ceiling because there's going to be other people that are getting open, and Josh Allen will have plenty of time to throw. That's going to be beneficial for people like Isaiah McKenzie, Dawson Knox, Gabe Davis, those types Stephon Diggs will get his, but just don't expect some of these ceiling games when they're going to be having so much time to throw it. It won't always be the Stephon Diggs show because first read, second read, whatever, will have plenty of time to run their routes and get open against this Detroit defense, which is pretty soft. As far as the Detroit side, number 2 in offensive pass protection, and number 13 in offensive pass DVOA. Buffalo 14-7. This is kind of a favor there for Detroit. They should have some time to pass. That's going to be good for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I believe we have DJ Chark coming back. That could be interesting on that side of the ball. Otherwise, they really don't have very many pass weapons currently. It's kind of a rough go of it for Detroit in the pass game as far as weapons are concerned. Run blocking, number 3 and number 7 for Detroit versus Buffalo, 4-4. Again, this is one of those evenly matched ones where the people who are good at football will produce in these sort of situations. Or usually like a studs eat. I don't know if Detroit necessarily is that, but DeAndre Swift, if you could get a little bit more volume, fits that bill. Otherwise, it seems like, this is one of those games that's going to be higher paced. If Detroit's passing the ball and having time to pass and being, okay there in the run game, they should be able to move the ball or push the pace a little bit. Buffalo with their pass game should be just fine. The run game's not like a detriment this week against this Detroit defense. They could be pushing the pace. Looking at Buffalo, they're green across the board. Detroit, they're number 3 when trailing. They're number 4 when leading. 10 in overall offensive pace of play. 11th in neutral situations. So I do expect Detroit to be behind in this, which bodes well for them pushing the pace and passing. So I think this one could shoot out. It's going to be obviously very popular on that Thanksgiving Day slate, so keep that in mind. But certainly some pieces from Detroit that you can get, and obviously some of these Buffalo pass catchers. I don't know how popular Diggs is going to be. I think he'll be pretty highly rostered in this, but if you kind of fade him and go some cheaper routes there or get into that Buffalo pass attack with some other options, that could be kind of a sneaky play in a way to get a little bit different on the slate. Getting into the next game here, we have New York Giants going into Dallas as 9-point road underdogs here. So Dallas favored by 9, another big discrepancy there in the totals. Dallas 27.25 team implied total. The Giants 18.25 for a 45.5 Vegas game total overall. The number 2 game on the slate as far as that's concerned, dropping almost 10 points. On the Giants' offensive side, 31st in offensive pass protection, 14th in pass DVOA, while Dallas is number 1 and number 2. Dallas certainly a good option on defense for your Thanksgiving Day slate, as they should be able to get after New York. Dallas should have plenty of opportunity to move the ball and be successful in that regard. So New York should be in passing situations more often. Dallas gets after the quarterback very well, so they're probably going to be the most popular defense. Otherwise, Buffalo likely up there as well. We'll get into the next game for defense. But Dallas defense certainly in play here. New York is going to have to get the ball out quickly. We did see Wan'Dale Robinson very successful in that regards last week, but it sounds like he tore some sort of ligament, out for the rest of the year, which is unfortunate for him. Doesn't really leave any pass game options for the Giants anymore. They have Darius Slayton and a bunch of nobodies there. I couldn't even tell you who's coming in as their second wide receiver. Lawrence Cager there at tight end seems to be getting some of the offensive work. Really, it just means if they're going to be under duress and having to get the ball out quickly, it's going to be more targets to Barkley. You keep taking away those pass game weapons, he's going to be the only one open or that they can dump it off to. So keep that in mind. It's just going to be more Barkley targets. As far as the run game is concerned for Barkley, number 27 and 11 for the Giants. Dallas 16 and 10 at stopping it. It's not going to be very efficient for Barkley on the ground. He is certainly capable of busting off a big run, but don't expect him to have this monster ceiling week in the rush game. If he gets there in this particular matchup on DraftKings, it's, I don't know if he hits a 100-yard bonus on any other thing, but he should see a massive target share. I'm assuming he'll see upwards of 8 to 10 targets in this particular matchup, just because there's no one really left to throw to, and they'll be under duress quite a bit in this game. Again, look at the Giants tight ends. They could be super cheap if you're trying to jam somebody in on DraftKings. Look at one of those guys, as they should, benefit from some of these quicker targets. The Dallas side should be moving the ball just fine. Number 6 in offensive pass protection, number 17 in pass DVOA. The Giants 23 and 24. Dallas should have all sorts of time to throw. This is going to be very good for the pass game. Pretty much everyone. Schultz, Gallup, Lamb, Bookham, Lamb, and Schultz, the most enticing in DFS as far as seasonal long leagues. I think you can start Gallup in this and be fine. On the run game side, Dallas number 5 and number 3. The Giants 28 and 28 at stopping the run. Even bigger favor for in the favor of Dallas here. Dallas run game should be very effective. Wouldn't be surprised to see Zeke come back a little bit more from his knee injury if they're going to baby it after this last week. That could be certainly the case as well. But I think Dallas run game, Pollard and Zeke, both viable in DFS. Zeke's probably going to be a little bit lower rostered, and he's actually cheaper on these sites. So to keep that in mind, he could be a little bit sneaky or a way to get contrarian in the DFS games. I would say any of Zeke, Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, or Schultz, 2 touchdowns or more for them is certainly on the table. Any one of them, obviously not all of them are going to score 2 touchdowns, but I think Lamb, Schultz, Zeke, and Pollard are all risks for multi-touchdowns this week. Gallup certainly could have a good game. I don't see him on the list of multi-touchdown within his range of outcomes. But keep that in mind. I think Dallas pushes the pace here. Dallas scores a lot of points, and that should be good for your Thanksgiving Day slate. And like I said, a way to get different, kind of looking at Schultz, Zeke, they're probably going to be a little bit lower rostered. And as far as, actually, Schultz is probably going to be super popular based off of the other tight ends on the slate. Giants don't have anybody. Detroit doesn't have anybody. Buffalo's got Knox, but he's not super popular, so Schultz is probably going to be your most popular tight end on this slate. Just keep that in mind. New England at Minnesota is the final game on the Thanksgiving slates. We have a 42.5 point Vegas game total with Minnesota at 2.5 point home favorites. 22.5 team implied total for Minnesota, 20 for New England. Getting into the New England side, we have them at 29 and 26 in the offensive pass categories. Minnesota 11 and 19. Certainly in the favor of Minnesota's defense here. New England's going to need quicker passes. We saw last week that maybe kind of benefited Ramondre Stevenson in the pass game. Nobody really outside of that, and I want to say Jonnu Smith had like 4 targets as well. Those are the biggest beneficiaries. Again, if they're going to be under duress, they're going to need those quicker passes that ends up being the tight ends and the running backs versus the receivers. Just keep that in mind for this slate. Jonnu Smith may be sneaky. Could be. As far as the run game for New England, 18 and 24, that's been kind of their bread and butter this year. It's slowly dwindling into not a very good matchup for them week in and week out. We have Minnesota at number 9 and number 13 at stopping it. So again, in the favor of Minnesota's defense here. I expect New England's offense to struggle for the second week in a row. It was a similar situation last week with the Jets, and we saw kind of what happened. It was a windier game. This one's in a dome, so that will play an effect. But New England at 20 points, I don't see them hitting that. 14, 17 range for them certainly on the table. 13, 10 certainly on the table. But I wouldn't say 20 is a realistic total that I see New England getting to. On the Minnesota offensive side, they're number 13 and 23 in the offensive pass protection. New England number 2 and number 1 at getting after the quarterback. Similar situation to last week with Dallas. Minnesota, we saw struggle absolutely in the pass game given that scenario. Could be more of the same this week. Hopefully not for myself as a Minnesota Vikings fan, but this makes me want to fade the pass game. I think people are going to see Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins kind of as a potential matchup or a way to get some high fantasy points in matchup this week. I think it really favors TJ Hawkinson more than anything. Him and Schultz, I think, are probably the best tight end plays on the slate as far as ceilings are concerned. If they're going to need to get the ball out quicker, I think it's just going to be a little bit more Hawkinson targets and a few more Dalvin Cook targets, and then really Justin Jefferson if he's getting open. I don't know how Bill Belichick's going to kind of attack this particular problem that his defense will have, but I could see Justin Jefferson being the other beneficiary of needing to get the ball out quick and being just the first read on a lot of things. But really, Cook and Hawkinson are the ones that I think will see the target increase in this, and Justin Jefferson's ceiling is going to be capped because of this. On the run blocking side, Minnesota 13-13, New England 15-12. We do have Dalvin Cook here as a studs eat kind of scenario where it's even. The people who are good at football just will produce in these particular situations. The ones who aren't good at football usually don't produce. Dalvin Cook is very good at football. I do think he is the best running back play on the particular slate. I don't think, we have the Dallas running back situation, which seemed very beneficial, but I don't know, that work's going to be split. I could easily see Zeke, getting 2 touchdowns, Pollard, getting the higher yardage total and a touchdown, and they kind of split the work. Dalvin Cook, I think, is the one that's going to dominate on this particular slate. And really, he could be the slate breaker for this particular Thanksgiving Day slate. I'm probably going to have him in most of my lineups and try to build around that and some of the Buffalo pass attack. But I think that will be very kind of, who knows what kind of running backs are going to be trying to jam in a lot of Dallas players, I think, a lot of Saquon Barkley, and I think this Minnesota, after this dud last week, Cook is probably going to be one of the, he's not going to be a top 2 rostered running back on the week. Jamal Williams had a huge week. This slate could probably see the running backs. I just think Dalvin Cook's not going to be that popular, and I think he will be the top scoring running back on this slate, unless it's somebody from Dallas there, if Pollard can get the vast majority of the work. So that's the Thanksgiving slate. Let's get underway to the rest of the main slate here. We'll kind of go from the top games down to the bottom games and get this underway and try to keep this show under an hour. We got two games tied for the number 1 on the slate. Las Vegas going into Seattle is one of them. And then another late game, which is the Chargers going to Arizona, is the other one, tied for first place at 47.5 Vegas game total. We have Seattle 3.5-point home favorites, 25.5 team implied total. Vegas 22 team implied total. Getting into the Vegas side, number 11 and number 18 in the offensive pass categories. Seattle number 10 and 17. Studs eat scenario, just like I was talking about with Dalvin Cook. This will be another Davante Adams week. This has been the case for Las Vegas for the last 4 weeks. This is 5 straight weeks where it has been a studs eat scenario in the pass game, and then either a studs eat or a very good matchup for Vegas in the run game, which has been really why Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs have been crushing. I think this is a very similar week to that, as Vegas is number 1 and number 6 in the run blocking, and then Seattle 18 and 17 at stopping the run. Again, studs eat scenario in the pass game, very beneficial in the run game for Vegas. I do think that they can outproduce this 22-point Vegas total or team implied total. Wouldn't be surprised to see them put up 24, 27 points here. Seattle certainly capable of pushing the pace as well, getting into their offense. Number 24 and 4 in the offensive pass categories. Vegas, though, 30 and 32 in the offense or the defensive pass rush categories. This means Seattle's going to have more time than they're used to pass the ball. This is going to be very good for Lockett. This is going to be very good for DK Metcalf. Certainly the tight ends get involved there around the end zone and are capable of getting in as well if you want somebody sneaky and a little bit different from what's likely going to be a popular game to stack with Adams and some of those Seattle wide receivers. On the run blocking side, Seattle 21 and 20, Vegas 14 and 22. That's pretty even. Slightly favors the Vegas defense there. Ken Walker probably going to be a little bit more inefficient than you're used to, but we've certainly seen his talent. capable of breaking off big runs. Wouldn't be, all that shocked if that happens in this. I just think the overall, as the volume goes up, I don't think his efficiency will be particularly great on a run-to-run basis. So really, Vegas, Jacobs and Adams, and then Seattle pass game. I do think this game has a chance to go over just because I think Seattle can pass the ball all over Vegas. Vegas shouldn't have any issues moving the ball on Seattle. So I do see this game kind of hitting the over, and they are the number one game on the slate, tied with the Chargers and Arizona here. Again, at 47.5 points, we have the Chargers actually 4.5-point road favorites, 26 team implied total. Arizona 21.5 team implied total. Let's see go up if we get some Kyler Murray news that he's going to be playing this week. I think this is kind of assuming that we'll have Colt McCoy in there. On the Chargers side, number 3 in offensive pass protection, 19 in pass DVOA versus Arizona 27 and 22. Huge favor for the Chargers. They should have plenty of time to throw. This is going to be good for Palmer, and this is going to be good for Keenan Allen as they kind of just, Keenan Allen's probably going to be the first read, get plenty of targets because he'll be open. Palmer, as a beneficiary when he's going to have a little bit more time to throw, and he's the first read for those particular passes. I don't know if Everett's going to necessarily benefit from this, having more time. He can get open, certainly, but if everybody's kind of able to get time to get there, I don't know how many times Everett's going to be, the first or second read in some of these plays that they run, or how many scenarios that they're going to be in where he is the first or second read. They do have not Alvin Kamara, but Austin Eckler there that can pass catch as well and run routes, so just keep that in mind. The run blocking side, 26 and 31 for the Chargers, not very good, but fortunately for them, Arizona 25 and 23. Again, evenly matched. People who are good at football will do well. Austin Eckler is very good at football. He should be very effective on the ground in this one, but I do expect the Chargers to be able to not only run the ball, but have plenty of time to pass. I see the Chargers scoring easily, 27, 30 points in this. And then on the Arizona side, number 14 in offensive pass protection, number 29 in offensive pass DVOA. Chargers 20th and 11th. Arizona maybe will have a little bit more time than they're used to, fairly evenly matched, but I think this is, a little bit more beneficial for Hopkins. Again, it's fairly close, a slight favor for Arizona here, but when it's close like that, the people who are good at football will do well, and that certainly is Hopkins. And I think that's how you're going to want to attack it. Sounds like Greg Dortch might not be playing. Rondale Moore, I'm not entirely sure what happened to him. And his injury, just keep those things on your plate. And we have Trey McBride there at tight end. So Hopkins may see a super increase in volume in this particular matchup. Probably going to be a popular play as well because of that. On the run blocking side for Arizona, 30th and 27, not very good, but fortunately for them, just like the Chargers run game, the Chargers defensive run stopping is pretty poor at 29 and 30. Arizona should find it easy enough to run the ball. They certainly don't mind Connor getting a decent amount of volume. I expect him and Ingram to be pretty efficient on the ground, or at least more effective than you otherwise expect. Both of these teams fairly high paced. Chargers, green pretty much across the board. Arizona, 4th in overall pace of play. Number 6 when they're trailing, and they're expected to trail in this. They do slow down a little bit when they're leading by 7+, but really this could be one where the pace kind of gets pushed to Arizona. Should be fine running the ball, and they should have, time to pass, and I think they can move the ball a little bit less effectively than the Chargers, but I could see this one hitting the over as well. Now let's get into the number 3 game on the slate and keep this rolling. We got Houston at Miami. I do enjoy this game. Just in general, we have a 46 Vegas game total. Miami 13-point home favorites, 29.5 team implied total. I'm going to assume that's the highest on the main slate here. Houston 16.5 team implied total. Again, number 3 on the slate. Offensive pass protection for Houston, number 22 and 30, not very good, kind of, bottom third there, but fortunately for them, Miami 25 and 29. Houston should have a little bit more time to pass the ball than they're used to in this, which is going to be good for Cooks. It's going to be good for Nico Collins. Getting into the run blocking side, 25 and 29, that's pretty poor. Miami, number 5 and number 9 at stopping the run. Again, I said fade Dameon Pierce last week. That was very good advice. He did have a poor game. It's a similar situation this week. He's going to have a poor game and not be very effective on the ground. So look for Cooks and look for Nico Collins as kind of sneaky pivots off of probably a popular Miami team and getting some run backs there. I don't know if it's going to be the Pierce people trying to run him back on these Miami stacks, but just keep that in mind. Miami's offense should be humming in this 29.5 team implied total. I could see them, pushing 40 some points in this and getting this Vegas game total over this 46 total. They are number 9 and number 1 in the offensive pass categories. Houston 21 and 25. Huge favor for Miami there. Certainly Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle will benefit from this. Mike Gesicki should benefit from this. Trent Sherfield even could get in on the action. As far as the run blocking is concerned, Houston, they're historically bad this year against the run. Like bottom 5 in the history of the NFL against the run this year. Miami very good at running. We've seen it now the last couple of weeks with Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. Expect them to be very effective at number 12 and 15 in the run blocking, so kind of middle of the road there, slightly above average. Houston 30th and 31. As I said, they're historically bad this year against the run. I do think this game will favor Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert getting the vast majority of the fantasy points here. Certainly could be wrong. Pass game is a huge option or a huge benefit here for Miami as well. They're just going to move the ball very well. I think they're going to be in lots of scoring situations, and ultimately I think that's going to lead to a lot of Jeff Wilson touchdowns. Would not be surprised one bit if he ends up with 2 or 3 in this particular matchup. And a lot of people are probably going to be on that Miami pass game because they've been so good in that this year. I don't mind hitting up like a Jeff Wilson with the Nico Collins or a Cook bring back in this particular matchup. I do see the game hitting the over in this just because I think Houston will have time to throw the ball. They should be able to, put up somewhere in that range of, 17 to 20 points on Miami's defense here. And then Miami, I see putting up over 30 in this particular matchup. So keep that in mind. It should be an interesting one for the DFS slate. Now getting into the number 4 game on the slate is Kansas City and the Rams. As I had said earlier with the team implied total, we got Kansas City up there at 29.25 as 14.5 point home favorites over the Rams. Rams 14.75 team implied total. Vegas game total of 44 for the 4th ranked one on the slate. Getting into the Rams as the away team, 25 in offensive pass protection, 22 in pass DVOA. Kansas City number 3 and number 20 in the pass rush. I don't expect the Rams to have a ton of time to throw the ball. They're going to need quicker passes. It should be a Higbee week. He could be, one of those slate breakers as far as tight ends are concerned. Instead of combo breaker, slate breaker. They're going to need to get the ball out quick. They should be under duress, and it seems like after Kupp went down, Higbee was the biggest beneficiary as he ran a lot of routes and kind of got a lot of targets. They just weren't very good targets. If we get Matt Stafford back in there, a little bit more competent quarterback, I think we could see a bunch of Higbee targets in this particular matchup. Don't be surprised if Kyron Williams gets quite a few of those as well. Could be a sneaky, very cheap running back to get in this. The run blocking for the Rams, 32 and 26. For Kansas City, 26 and 19 at stopping the run. Below average for the Rams run game here, but certainly a better matchup on the ground than it is in the air. I just don't like the Rams' opportunity to move the ball very effectively. If I'm going to get anybody from this, it's going to be Higbee and his massive amount of targets. I just don't see the Rams scoring a bunch, but wouldn't be surprised if Higbee has one of those 8 or 10 catch performances in this. On the Kansas City side, they're number 4 and number 2 in the offensive pass protection. Rams 13 and 26 at getting after the quarterback. huge favor for Kansas City here. Kansas City should have plenty of time to throw the ball this week. Obviously, biggest beneficiary of that has been Travis Kelce pretty much the entire season. And because of all the injuries going there in the wide receiver room, Schuster, I don't know if he's going to be back from his concussion. Seems like we have Kadarius Toney with his hamstring injury popping back up. Probably not going to be in the game. If that's the case, Schuster coming back from a concussion, he could be kind of a sneaky DFS play. But if he's not in there, it seems like Justin Watson's the biggest beneficiary as far as running routes. If they're going to have plenty of time to throw the ball, he could get one of these deep bombs that they connect in. He's certainly capable of that. On the run blocking side, Kansas City 11-18, the Rams 12-5 at stopping the run, fairly evenly matched here. I think Kansas City moves the ball very effectively through the air, leaving the run game to fend for itself. Kansas City should find itself in plenty of scoring situations, though, and if that's the case, you could see somebody like Pacheco or McKinnon get into the end zone once or twice, if they're the ones that they end up calling the plays for. I just don't think they're going to be the main reason that they're, moving down the field, kind of like last week is a very good Kansas City run game matchup, and we saw Pacheco rip off a 100-yard game, get that 100-yard bonus. I don't necessarily see that in the cards this week. I think the pass game will be a little bit more effective, but they're certainly capable of being in scoring situations and putting up points in that manner. We got two games. Actually, we'll get into the number 5 game on the slate, and then we got 2 games that are tied for 6th. So Baltimore at Jacksonville, number 5 game on the main slate at 43.5 points for Vegas. We actually have Baltimore's 4-point road favorites at 23.75 team implied total. Jacksonville 19.75 team implied total. Getting into the Baltimore offensive side, they're 18 in pass protection, 8 in the pass DVOA. Jacksonville 32nd and 31st in the pass rush categories. This means Baltimore is going to have plenty of time to throw the ball. As I said last week, this is going to actually benefit Robinson the most, and we do know that Lamar likes to target the tight end position. So last week I said Isaiah Likely. I thought Andrews was going to still be out with his injury. He came back. He was mildly successful, 6 targets or 6 catches, something like that. Expect a similar week this week where we have Demarcus Robinson. He finished number 6 wide receiver on the FanDuel slate. I said he was one of those where he's going to be a DFS darling and put him in my dart throws category for the week, and he certainly hit. I think it's going to be him and Mark Andrews week. Looking at the run blocking, 23-1 for Baltimore versus Jacksonville 8-15. I don't think Baltimore is going to run the ball very effectively. They're out any sort of major talent there. Kenyon Drake seems to be the best one. He was very popular in DFS last week for some reason, but is a similar scenario where Baltimore's pass game was very, highly ranked as far as the, matchup was concerned, and the run game was very similar to this. So I expect this to be another Mark Andrews, Demarcus Robinson week, and the run game to struggle in this. As far as Jacksonville is concerned, number 8 and number 11 in the offensive pass protection categories. Baltimore number 8 and number 8. So pretty evenly matched there. The guys that are good at football should produce. I don't know, really if Jacksonville has a ton of that in the pass game. If you think they're going to be under a little bit more duress, that could be some Evan Ingram targets. That could be some dump offs to Etienne, people like that. Otherwise, it seems like Christian Kirk is probably their best wide receiver, and we could see him with some success if you think he's one of those guys that are just good at football and will produce. The run game for Jacksonville is below average, number 22-17 versus Baltimore 13-14. I just don't think Etienne's going to have a particularly efficient week. He's certainly capable of ripping off some big plays, but this isn't really suggestive that he will have one of those weeks this week. And Baltimore does play slow. Just keep that in mind. Wouldn't be surprised to see this hit the under as Baltimore's run game kind of struggles, and Lamar's pass game, is the best part of this whole matchup, but we saw last week that was kind of the case, and they struggled to move the ball against an inferior opponent there. Kind of a weird game, probably one that I'm avoiding for the most part, outside maybe a Demarcus Robinson cheapo play. Just keep that in mind. Interesting one, or kind of a boring one, I guess I would say, for DFS. Again, 2 games tied for 6th. First one here, Tampa Bay at Cleveland. The next one will be New Orleans at San Francisco. We have Tampa Bay going into Cleveland at 3.5-point road favorites, 23.25 team implied total. Cleveland at 19.75. Vegas game total of 43 overall. Offensive pass protection for Tampa Bay, number 1 and number 9. Very good. Cleveland, number 29 and 27 in the defensive pass rush categories. Huge favor for Tampa Bay's pass game. Should be plenty of time for Tom Brady to throw. Going to be beneficial for, obviously, Godwin. Going to be beneficial for Mike Evans. Going to be beneficial for Julio Jones. I think those guys should have pretty solid weeks and see, a decent amount of targets with, receptions there. On the run blocking side, Tampa Bay 24 and 30, an area we've seen them really struggle because they've been playing some, better run defenses lately. That's not Cleveland. They're 31st and 32nd. They're giving it up hand over fist in the run category. This could be a big game for Tampa Bay's offense finally, where they have an offensive explosion. I don't know what the weather is going to look like in Cleveland come Sunday. A little bit too early to start looking at those weather patterns that are like 5 days out. Not super accurate, but I think Tampa Bay's run game will be effective in this. Wouldn't be surprised, like I said, to see Leonard Fournette with a big week. Kind of monitor that. Rachaad White last week with a Leonard Fournette kind of minor injury, ended up having some pretty solid output there fantasy-wise. A lot of these rookies, when they come out of the bye week, which Tampa Bay is coming out of the bye week, have an increased role. Just something to monitor, keep an eye on, but I do like Tampa Bay's run game in this. Tampa Bay's pass game, obviously a very good situation. I could see Tampa Bay easily hitting the over on their team implied total of 23.25. Not out of the realm of what I think is a possibility of 30-some points, depending on weather. If it's fine in Cleveland on Sunday, it should be just fine for the Tampa Bay game. If it is windy, though, kind of lean on the Fournette part of this game. The Cleveland side, number 10 and number 7 in the pass protection category is pretty good. Unfortunately for them, Tampa Bay number 4 and number 6. It's a little bit below average as far as the pass protection is concerned. They're probably going to need a little bit quicker passes. That's going to be a little bit more dump-offs to the running back. We've seen Chubb actually be the beneficiary of that in the last few weeks. And then Amari Cooper is kind of more the underneath route runner, and Harrison Bryant as well, probably a beneficiary there. Hunt doesn't seem like he's part of the pass game plans recently, so just keep that in mind. The run blocking side is a studs eat scenario, pretty even. Cleveland 10 and 4, Tampa Bay 11 and 11. Again, studs eat. I think Chubb should have a pretty successful week against Tampa Bay. And again, if the weather is poor, kind of a windy game, don't expect the passes to necessarily be super successful. I would say you could run a Chubb into your DFS lineups, and a ceiling game is certainly within the realm of possibilities for him in this particular matchup. The other number 6 game, as I said, is New Orleans versus San Francisco. San Francisco 9.5-point home favorites. Again, this is a 43 Vegas game total. San Francisco accounting for 26.25 of that. New Orleans 16.75 team implied total. New Orleans pass protection 17 and 24. San Francisco 9 and 9. Kind of a subpar matchup here for the Saints pass game. They probably will be under a little bit of duress as they play this. Going to need a little bit quicker passes. Olave and Kamara and maybe Juwan Johnson are the biggest beneficiaries there. Getting the target increases on the run game side. Saints 9 and 12, pretty decent, but San Francisco number 2 and number 3. I expect the Saints to be kind of a no-go as far as being very effective in their matchup this week. We've seen them kind of play worse than some of these matchups suggest and play better than some of these matchups suggested, but really I think they're going to need a little bit quicker passes. As I said, Jarvis Landry, Kamara, and Jawan Johnson there at tight end, probably the biggest beneficiaries. I don't see the run game being super successful. As I said, I don't think New Orleans is going to be able to move the ball very well in this, which is going to be good for the San Francisco run game, and we'll get into that here. San Francisco run number 8 and number 22, the Saints 19 and 20th. Pretty decent matchup favor for San Francisco in the pass run or the rush blocking category. I do expect Christian McCaffrey and Mitchell to have some pretty good success there in the run game. Wouldn't be surprised to see them each score a touchdown in this, or at least have several scoring opportunities. The pass game for San Francisco, number 12 and number 5. The Saints, number 6 and number 15 in the pass rush category. San Francisco likely not going to have like a ton of time to throw. Again, this is a slight benefit to New Orleans Saints defense. They're going to need a little bit quicker passes, and the run game should be very effective. So I think this is more of a Deebo Samuel week and a Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell week than an Ayuk week. Just keep that in mind. I don't think the Saints are going to be able to push the pace or push San Francisco at all to change their offensive philosophy. So San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey, and Mitchell, I think, will be the biggest beneficiaries in this. Deebo certainly part of the run game as well, could be effective. Just kind of a weird game. I don't think I'm necessarily interested in anyone in this except for maybe Christian McCaffrey, maybe Mitchell if he's super cheap and you kind of want somebody that's going to be extremely low rostered. He's probably going to be sub 2%. So that's how I would attack that game. Getting into the number 8 game on the slate, Cincinnati at Tennessee. We have Cincinnati actually has 2-point road favorites going into Tennessee. This is a 42.5-point Vegas game total. 22.25 team implied total for Cincinnati. 20.25 for Tennessee. Cincinnati 23 and 10 in the pass categories. Tennessee 18 and 13. Fairly close matchup. One of those where it's close enough where it's kind of a studs eat scenario where it's not so bad of a situation, which I think benefits Higgins in this particular matchup. If they're going to need to get the ball out maybe a little bit quicker, the tight end there, Hurst, could be also in play. Getting into the run blocking, number 14 and number 9 for Cincinnati, so kind of above average compared to the NFL there, but Tennessee number 1 in both run stopping categories. Expect Cincinnati run game to be pretty poor here and ineffective. Pirine and Mixon out with a concussion. Monitor that throughout the week. I just think they're going to come back and not be very effective in this run game. So the pass game is how you're going to want to attack it. And that's even kind of a below average matchup for Cincinnati. On the Tennessee side, they're number 27 and number 12 in the offensive pass protection categories. Fortunately for them, they're kind of matched with Cincinnati at 28 and 10. Tennessee should find themselves with a little bit more time to pass the ball than they're used to in this. Which should be good for Burke, should be good for Woods. Chigawankwo, the tight end there in Tennessee, we've seen have some explosive plays. Wouldn't be surprised to see that manifest itself in one play this week. Getting into the run blocking side, Tennessee number 7 and 14, Cincinnati 20 and 16. Outside of Tennessee's run stopping, the Tennessee's run blocking is the next best matchup pretty much in this entire game. I expect Tennessee to be able to run the ball very effectively on Cincinnati at the 7 and 20 matchup. And I think this is very good for Derrick Henry, and I do think it is very good for Tennessee in general. And yes, here we go. We got the purge siren. That means Tennessee upset alert. I fully expect Tennessee to, be very effective running the ball. This could be one of those Derrick Henry monster weeks where he just keeps getting fed because they're leading. Cincinnati can't necessarily move the ball. And one of those situations where Henry maybe, busts off 130, 150 and gets you 2 touchdowns. Certainly within the realm of possibilities. We've seen Cincinnati be very effective in some of these scenarios this week as, Joe Burrow is just a very good quarterback. But in this particular matchup, I'm saying upset alert, careful for Tennessee here. Wouldn't be at all surprised to see Derrick Henry kind of take over this game. On the next game, Atlanta and Washington. We'll get up to that one. This is in Washington. So Atlanta going into Washington as 4.5-point road underdogs. Washington the favorite there, 23.25 team implied total for Washington, 18.75 team implied total for Atlanta. Vegas game total overall 42 for the ninth ranked game on the main slate. Atlanta number 30 in offensive pass protection, number 15 in the pass DVOA. Washington 12 and 16 at getting after the quarterback. Atlanta likely not going to have a lot of time to pass. Just lost Kyle Pitts, really the only thing in town as far as quicker passes. Tight end Drake London, and then the running backs there I think are really the beneficiaries of a few more targets, except Atlanta doesn't really pass the ball, so kind of gross as far as the pass attack is concerned for me. In the run blocking unit, we've seen Atlanta kind of dominate there. Again, they agree matchups, number 4 and number 8, but Washington number 7 and number 2 against Atlanta. I don't think Atlanta is going to move the ball very effectively in this. Usually it's the run game that gets them there. We've seen now like 2 weeks in a row where their run game has actually kind of struggled, and I do see their run game kind of struggling in this. The pass game doesn't look like they have any weapons, and they're not going to have time to throw. I think Atlanta, if you're playing them in DFS, you're going to be sorry. I wouldn't want any of these players. Start looking at your season-long leagues. The offense, I think, is just going to be poor. So, if you got an option besides Mariota, I would go with the other option. If you got somebody besides Cordero Patterson or Tyler Algier at running back, I would go with them. Kind of an avoid for me in the season-long lineups, and a hands-off for sure in DFS. On the Washington side, it's almost the exact opposite. It's kind of a wheels up. Atlanta's defense is just so poor across the board. In the pass rush, 30 and 28, and then 27 and 24 in the run stopping. They're red across the board, so very poor. The pass game matchup, 30 and 28 for Atlanta. Washington, 20 and 28. They should see a little bit more time to pass the ball than they're used to. This is going to be very good for Terry McLaurin. I think he has, a pretty solid week this week. We should see maybe Jahan Dotson have a few extra targets and be successful with them. And in the run blocking, 28 and 25, which isn't very good for Washington. Fortunately for them, Atlanta is also poor, 27 and 24. Again, they should be, a little bit more effective on the ground than they're perhaps used to. This is good for Brian Robinson. This is good for Gibson. This is good for Curtis Samuel. I just think across the board, this is good for Washington's offense. Wouldn't be surprised to see this game, maybe hit that 42 Vegas game total, but Washington scoring 27 to 30 of those, and Atlanta scoring 10 to 13. Just keep that in mind. I think Atlanta's going to get blown out in this. Washington should be very effective. Certainly pieces that you can add in DFS, McLaurin, running backs there in Washington, Dotson, Curtis Samuel as one-off kind of roster fillers, but avoiding Atlanta. Next game on the slate, number 10, Chicago, New York Jets. And we'll get to that game, which is kind of gross, the 39.5-point Vegas game total. Chicago going into New York Jets down 4.5 points. So the Jets favored by 4.5. 22-point team implied total for the Jets. 17.5 team implied total for Chicago. Chicago's offensive pass protection, 32 and 27, bottom of the barrel. Jets number 7 and number 5, one of the biggest discrepancies you can get. Jets should be all over Justin Fields in this matchup. Jets defense certainly in play. I don't know how popular they're going to be considering Chicago's offense has been so good the last 5 or 6 weeks. We've seen Justin Fields actually dominate, top 8 quarterback performances on the week for about the last 6-7 weeks. Been very good. This is suggesting he's going to be under duress and going to need to get the ball out quick. That's going to benefit Kmet. That's going to benefit Montgomery. I'm not sure who else is running some shorter routes there. I know Mooney sometimes gets some behind the line of scrimmage passes. That could be the case. I just don't think the pass game is going to be very effective in this, but maybe a few extra targets to Montgomery is what happens. On the run blocking side, Chicago 15 and 10, kind of middle of the pack there. The Jets 6 and 8 in stopping the run. Again, that's a below average to poor matchup here for Chicago's run game. I don't see them being very successful. I don't see them moving the ball very well against this Jets defense. Montgomery is probably the best play that you can get out of Chicago. I think Fields is going to struggle. Would not be surprised to see him with, several interceptions or just, getting out of the pocket, trying to scramble. He might have a few more rush attempts. I just don't know how effective he's really going to be in this particular matchup. Kind of a hands-off for me in this particular week for Chicago. The Jets side, defense certainly in play. I would not be surprised if they had 5 or 6 sacks in this particular matchup, similar to last week with the Patriots. We have seen Justin Fields hold on to the ball too long. Maybe he's getting a little bit more comfortable scrambling, but again, I could certainly see multiple sacks, 5-6 for the Jets. I could see a pick 6 in this if he's making some poor decisions on where to go with the ball or throwing it as he's getting hit. Certainly strip sack within the realm of possibilities for the Jets defense. I like them the best out of anything in this particular game. As far as the pass game for the Jets, 15-20, Chicago 26-30. It's an above average one for the Jets there. Should be a Garrett Wilson style week. Maybe Conklin seems to be a favorite target, but we got a quarterback change there. So if we see Flacco come in or Mike White come in, this could be wheels up for the Jets pass game. It's just a matter of, who's going to be the quarterback there. If it's Zach Wilson, I don't like the Jets scoring very many points. Also, keep in mind the weather in here in the Jets home game. It could get pretty windy. It could get poor. If that's the case, you're probably going to want to pivot off this pass game. But if it's going to be nice, decent weather there, and we get like a Joe Flacco in there, we could see, Garrett Wilson and some of these other pass game options flourish in this matchup. As far as the run game's concerned, it's a little bit below average for the Jets, 29-21, Chicago 22-25, fairly close. I wouldn't expect this run game, two-headed monster there, three-headed kind of, as far as splitting the snaps is concerned, kind of an avoid for me, an avoid in your season long. If the weather is nice, I could see the pass game being very effective in this particular matchup. And really, the Jets defense was the only thing I'm remotely interested for DFS. If the weather is nice, you could get a one-off situation, roster filler on the Jets pass game. After that, gets real ugly. Number 11, Denver at Carolina, two of the worst teams in the league here this year, especially on offense. 36 Vegas game total. I'm not sure I've seen anything that low since I've started doing this show. Denver actually favored on the road with 19.25 team implied total. Carolina at 16.75 as their team implied total. Getting into the Denver side, 26-25 in the pass protection. Carolina 22-21, fairly close. Getting into the run game, 17-28 for Denver, 17-21 for Carolina, pretty close. Kind of a studs eat scenario. Getting into the Carolina side, offensive pass protection 19-32, Denver 16-4. Seeing that drop now as the trade deadline hit and they traded away the ends there. On the Carolina run blocking side, 16-16, Denver 23-18. Really the best matchup of this entire game is the Carolina run attack at 16-23. Still fairly close though. Really, this is just a studs eat scenario where the people who are good at football should produce. And really in this, it's DJ Moore and Cortland Sutton. I think those are the only two options outside of, just some one-offs that you're putting into your lineups. Those two are the only ones that I would even remotely consider in DFS. Everyone else is hands off. If you're looking to, start anyone from these teams in your seasonal long, it better be those two. Otherwise, I know Terrace Marshall has been pretty popular lately. He's an avoid for me. This game's an avoid. It's 36 terrible offenses. Don't see that one being very successful. That's going to do it for the main slate. Let's get into the Sunday night game and then the Monday night game. So we got an interesting one here on Sunday Night Football. Green Bay going into Philadelphia as 7-point road underdogs. Philadelphia favored by 7, 26.75 team implied total for them. Green Bay 19.75 team implied total. Overall 46.5 from Vegas. Green Bay's offensive pass protection, number 5 and 16. Philly 5 and 3. Pretty close here. It should be one of those people who are good at football, do well. I'm not sure Green Bay necessarily has any of that in the wide receiver room. Lately, that's been Christian Watson getting a bunch of touchdowns, and then Allen Lazard kind of being the number 1 target there. Keep that in mind. I think we have Randall Cobb coming back. He could be a bigger beneficiary here, especially if we think Philadelphia is going to be getting after Rodgers. I think Cobb could see himself with some extra targets, which is very good for an island game. Get him probably into your lineups, as he's going to be the least popular Packer there. As far as the run blocking, though, Green Bay, number 2, number 5. Philly, number 24, 26. I think Green Bay is going to be able to run the ball very effectively in this. It's going to be the Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon show, I believe, this week on the Green Bay side. And then kind of maybe Cobb there in the pass game. I think that's how Green Bay is going to attack it. I think they're going to keep it slow and then just kind of run the ball down Philadelphia's throats and be successful in that regard. On the Philadelphia offensive side, number 21 and 6 in the offensive pass categories. Green Bay 17 and 12. Pretty even there. Studs eat. I think A.J. Brown is a stud, so I think he could have a solid game in this particular matchup. And then on the run blocking side, Philly number 6 and number 2. Green Bay number 32 and 29. Huge benefit or huge favor there for Philadelphia's run game. Miles Sanders certainly capable of producing in this. I think the run game should be very well in this for both sides. I think that's how both sides are going to attack this game. If you're playing some prop bets, bet the under. Green Bay plays exceptionally slow. Philadelphia a little bit quicker there, but yeah, I think it's going to be a run game, a running type of game here in Philly. Not sure what the weather will be, but if it's windier there in Philly, certainly the run game is just going to be more effective way to move the ball. So yeah, just looking, I think, you know, it's going to be one of those slower paced games, a lot of, you know, rush attempts, and you're going to be looking at the under hitting in this. As far as attacking the game, A.J. Brown, I don't mind him. Miles Sanders, don't mind him. Obviously, Hurts and is probably the better of the 2 quarterbacks here, but getting that Green Bay run game going, both I think are viable, and then maybe a Cobb there from Green Bay in the pass game. Do your best. That's how I think the game's going to go. Monday Night Football, we have Pittsburgh at Indianapolis. We have Indy as 2.5-point home favorites, 21 team implied total. Pittsburgh 18.5 team implied total, 39.5 overall Vegas game total. Pittsburgh number 16 and 21 in the offensive pass protection categories. Indy 15 and 14, pretty evenly matched there. I think Pittsburgh studs eat. I think George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth all can have pretty solid games in this particular matchup. The run blocking is a fade for me. Pittsburgh 19 and 23. Indy number 3 and number 6 at stopping the run. Najee Harris kind of off my list as far as getting them into your lineups. I do like Pittsburgh's pass attack there for this island game. As far as Indy is concerned, 28 and 31 in the offensive pass protection categories. Pittsburgh 24 and 18. Very, closely matched here. Indy may find themselves with a little bit extra time than they're used to trying to pass this, but TJ Watt is back. Could be disruptive. I do like Pittman and Paris Campbell in this particular matchup. Based on this, Indy's run game, 31 and 32. Pittsburgh 10 and 7 at stopping the run. I don't think JT is going to be very effective. He's probably going to be a popular play in this particular Monday Night Football game. I would go Indy pass game. I would go Pittsburgh pass game. Get away from those running backs. And then I think you could see yourself, taking home some tournament money in this particular matchup. That's going to do it for Week 12 DFS. We got through 16 NFL games. Tried to keep it under an hour here. Looks like we were successful. Go out, consider subscribing, and thanks for watching this episode, people. Visit me, Toddzilla1337 on Twitter. That's where a lot of this stuff comes out, and you can see things game by game. Again, thanks for watching. Let's go win some money together, folks. Thanks. Bye.